YouTube has this kind of hype around it, and what do you think is the actual culture of YouTube and why?
Well, I mean, so I think you've asked three questions. I'll answer each of them as quickly as I can. Why does it have a hype? I mean, it sort of deserves the hype.
Right.
The thing is, it is an incredible platform for the easy production and the easy dissemination of video. There has been nothing like it. Now, again, I say I'm a media studies professor. My interest has been in people-made media and people using video and film to express themselves, to express political ambitions, to make art. But all of my work has been about low-end activist media. There was nothing like it in the history of the world. It revolutionized how easy it is to make media and how easy it is to move it. And that, God bless them, they deserve the hype. But there was a lot of other hype around YouTube. And I think the most important one to debunk, hello, student, is the idea that it's a so-called quote-unquote democratic platform. And a lot of my research and thinking has been about thinking about why it's not democratic. It may be that it provides some people, and a large number of people, more access to production, dissemination, and seeing video. Right. But there's a number of ways it's not democratic. And I'd say the easiest one that we can get our heads around is because the popularity organizes the structure of YouTube. So what that in effect means is that even though I can make a video, there's a very good chance, unless I'm making something that is extremely familiar, very acceptable, extremely slick, obnoxiously funny, very crude, or about mainstream culture, no one's going to see it anyway. The way in which it's built, a huge amount of what is produced democratically through democratic access, again, for those who own computers, and we do have to remember that the digital divide is extremely important to think about, that most people in the world don't have access to these computers. So that's not democratic to begin with. It sits in what I call niche tube, which is another version of YouTube, a version of YouTube where nothing is ever seen. It's not even a small tail, it's like an invisible tail. And given how badly the tagging system works, because it's user generated, it's impossible to find anything. So even though I can say something, the chance that anyone's ever going to hear it is extremely small. So it's a democracy of the norm, it's the democracy of the loudest, it's a democracy of the most acceptable, and that's not a democracy I want to live in. The whole point is democracy protects those of us who are on the fringes as well as those of us who are at the center. So, I mean, I'll start with that. Why are people super mean? People are super mean all over the internet. Right. And it's something that I think a lot about. Why many of the sites that we engage with are organized around norms of bigotry and anger and sort of shouting. It's not a productive way to engage in conversation. And one of the things we thought about in the class was, well, what are the norms in this classroom? Why don't we yell at each other? Why don't we call each other names? Why don't, when you say that, say, hey, you fag? I mean, it's not beyond not being acceptable, nothing gets accomplished. So part of what we were trying to think about is how do we kind of stretch internet culture or behave the way we want internet culture to be, so that if we're going to, their work is in the comment section, they actually have to comment in a way that makes sense, that is articulate, that is carefully written, and to sort of push against these norms.
Well, I just read The Filter Bubble by Eli Pariser. Have you read that yet?
I know of it, but I haven't read it.
And so in that book, he critiques the web in general, the process of filtering to sort of like give you personalized results that are ideally more like what you're looking for. So as a result, what he says is that we're creating this online culture of homophily, where your personal beliefs are being echoed back to you, and you're never being exposed to the serendipity of randomness and alternate views and that sort of thing. So are you suggesting that that's sort of what's happening on YouTube as a result of the way they filter it around popularity? And also, how do you think that YouTube could potentially change their system to make other types of content more likely to be seen?
Well, those are two very different questions. It's interesting because I think that what I'm talking about is a sort of filter bubble in reverse.
Okay.
So certainly what I believe happens, and by reverse I mean what I believe happens on YouTube is that hegemonic ideas,
Right.
ideas that we're already comfortable with, ideas that are already the norm, and we could even just say mainstream culture as it already is what is filtered. So it filters forward. Most of what's on there is music videos for videos made by mainstream record labels,
Right.
and television shows, rebroadcast, and clips from mainstream television,
Right.
30 seconds of them. And the kinds of jokes that, fly rampantly on YouTube are jokes that are told in ways that the largest number of people are going to be comfortable with. So it's a filter of what we already know and what we already expect, but not in the way that you suggested, like one-to-one. It's giving the one the most generic version of what people could make that you could possibly imagine. Now, that is not to say, I love YouTube too. All that other stuff is there, and it's pretty easy to find. There's just weirdness everywhere, and you can get to it. But the sort of dominant YouTube, that stuff is filtered out.
Yeah.
Now, what would YouTube need to do to change? That's such a big question and an important one, because I feel like we all know, living in this society as we do right now, that these corporate, industrial, technological norms, they just keep changing. They change so quickly.
Yeah.
It's like, where's MySpace? Okay. Well, where's YouTube? My guess is, 5 years from now, we won't be talking about YouTube. I have no idea what we'll be talking about instead. But they have their moment of defining our experience and what media culture is quite small.
Yeah.
And if YouTube doesn't figure out how to change, it'll be left behind too, right? There's lots of simple things I would love YouTube to do, and it has built in some of them since I started teaching on them. But one of the questions is, why can't you do more things than put videos and comment on the page? It's such a limited amount of functionality, given that anything could happen there. Why can't you attach things? Why can't you build around a video? It is my belief that it is organized the way it is to keep you consuming crap and never sitting still. And that's because it's organized around an advertising model that needs to move eyeballs. So, it has no incentive to keep you still. So all the things that we do to start building context and community on the internet, it's just not there. There's no reason technically why it can't be there. So, that would be the first thing I would want it to do. Allow us to build context around videos and allow them so they don't have to be these little fragments.
Yeah.
And when we use YouTube, we use it in dialogue with the entire internet, so we can go off of YouTube to find that stuff.
Yeah.
But why can't we do it on YouTube? That would be the first thing. I actually think there needs to be a different tagging system. I think user-generated tags make a lot of sense for something that's social. But YouTube is the largest archive of moving images in the world. There are a lot of serious and important things we can do with it alongside having fun. I'm not against having fun. But here's this resource, this incredible resource. And you can't use it in any kind of systematic way. So, another system of tagging, I think, is just critical. So you can actually find things.
Right.
And find them again. How many of you have found something on YouTube and tried to show it to a friend and you're like, oh my God, it's gone. I'll never find it again. You're like, put everything you can think of, every tag you can think of. And then it's not tagged in a rational way. So that's two suggestions.
And I think what you suggested makes sense, that it was made in 2006 with the technology of 2006, 2005, 2006. And in 2011, in many ways, it's the same. Whereas, what you're envisioning is leveraging a kind of superior web that will probably happen. And so it'll be interesting to see whether or not YouTube declines and is beaten by the new video sharing space where people have conversations around video, or whether or not they just, metamorphosize.
Well, let's just talk about it. We don't have conversations around video on YouTube.
Yeah.
We don't.
It's almost
I mean,
useless to stream if that's what you mean. You mean that, like, especially videos that have a lot of comments,
That's not a conversation.
Right.
You and I are having a conversation, okay?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean? I'm listening to you. I'm taking time to be very careful in what I say. I'm taking you very seriously. And, by the end of this, we're both going to have learned a lot. I have no experience like this on YouTube, except for, sometimes when people video comment.
Okay.
That does happen there. But, like, that would be really cool. Imagine a platform where people are actually having conversations about video.
Well,
That's not YouTube.
No, I think that's totally right. You guys, do you agree with that? Have you ever had like a super edifying experience reading a comment thread on YouTube? I'm seeing a lot of no's and head shaking. So
The thing is, I think what gets students down is that YouTube shouldn't be for edification. That would be the first thing they would say.
Right.
What's YouTube for education? It's for entertainment. YouTube doesn't say it's for edification. And I agree. There's absolutely nothing wrong with having fun there. There's nothing wrong with being entertained there. And there's nothing wrong that it entertains. However, it's a robust and open-ended technology that can also be used for other things human beings need, and it's not.